Reports are emerging that a rift is widening amid growing tension between Prince Harry and King Charles.
Prince Harry entered the palace expecting a carefully managed reunion. Instead, before he could take his assigned place, a senior official stepped into his path and handed him a sealed document bearing the king's authority. Within seconds, the Duke of Sussex discovered that the name, rank, and royal identity he had carried his entire life had been formally erased. The event had not welcomed him home. It had brought him there to witness his own removal. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Harry entered Buckingham Palace with his shoulders fixed and his face controlled. The Commonwealth reception mattered because senior royals, diplomats, military figures, and public representatives were gathered beneath one roof, making every gesture part of the monarchy's official message. He expected distance. He did not expect execution by protocol. The Lord Chamberlain blocked his path before the reception doors opened. That office manages palace ceremonies and carries out the monarch's instructions. Without raising his voice, the official presented the royal title's revocation instrument, a legal order removing every remaining title, style, ceremonial rank, honorary distinction, and palace privilege attached to Harry. Charles had signed it. The decision took effect immediately. Harry read the first page twice. His fingers tightened around the paper, but he refused to meet the courtier's eyes. Anger struck first. Then came the deeper wound. Everyone inside may already have known. The invitation had not restored his place. It had brought him back to watch that place disappear. An attendant lifted the seating card bearing Harry's former title and replaced it with one carrying only his personal name. No one spoke. That exchange of paper turned an institutional ruling into human humiliation, because the name removed from the table had followed him through service, marriage, grief, and exile. Charles had approved the invitation after signing the order. He wanted his son to receive the judgment inside the palace, not from lawyers, broadcasters, or a distant call. Yet nearby, the king sat beside a duplicate instrument and closed his eyes when an aide confirmed delivery. The monarch had protected the crown, but the father had wounded himself. Harry looked through the open doors and found William waiting at the far end of the hall. The prince did not approach. He offered neither victory nor comfort. Their eyes met, and the silence between the brothers became a warning. A handwritten instruction waited on the final page. Harry was ordered to meet William in the king's private audience room before leaving. His titles were already gone. The reason was still waiting behind another closed door. The document may have carried the king's signature, but the decision was rooted in wounds that no royal seal could conceal. For Charles, it was the destruction of a final connection to his younger son. For William, it was an act of protection after years of distrust. And for Harry, it was proof that the family he accused of abandoning him had now removed even the symbolic language that once declared he belonged among them. Harry stood alone in the corridor and folded the order with care. Those titles had never been empty words. They connected him to childhood ceremonies, military service, his mother's memory, and the years when palace walls still meant home. A royal style is the formal way a family member is named and addressed in official life, and losing it meant more than losing rank. It meant losing the language that once told the world where he belonged. William carried a different burden. The future king had spent months reading legal letters, security disputes, public statements, and private messages, because every question around Harry threatened the monarchy he would inherit. He believed the titles had become shields, used to command attention and authority while the duties behind them were refused. To him, uncertainty was no longer compassion. It was danger delayed. Charles had delayed the final order again and again. In one meeting, the king asked whether a temporary suspension might be enough. William answered that another pause would only postpone the same crisis and expose the crown to deeper damage. The father heard punishment. The heir heard protection. Neither man found a path that saved both family and institution. Harry felt only betrayal. He believed his father had chosen the survival of the monarchy over the survival of their bond. As he pressed the folded pages against his palm, he seemed to be trying to make the decision smaller and less final. But the words remained. Camilla had warned Charles during a recorded private conversation not to summon Harry before a public palace event. The Queen Consort said the court would turn legal discipline into personal humiliation. Catherine had also spoken privately to William, urging him to avoid surrounding his brother with officials. She feared shame would harden grief into hatred. The prince listened and arranged for only 3 men to enter the meeting. William now stood beside the audience room window, rehearsing his first sentence. He began once, stopped, and tried again. Anger remained, but so did grief for the brother who once understood him without explanation. Then Harry found a reference to a confidential incident report. One missing page pointed back to Windsor, and to the demand that had changed everything. Every royal rupture has one moment that later becomes impossible to forget. For this family, it came during a private dinner at Windsor Castle, when Harry placed a folder on the table and gave his father a choice. He wanted restored security, renewed palace access, and public recognition of his royal status. If the requests were rejected, he intended to release confidential correspondence that Charles believed should never leave the family archive. The room changed instantly. 3 weeks before the palace event, Charles invited Harry to Windsor for an attempt at reconciliation. No announcement was issued, and only a small security team knew he had entered through a secluded gate. The king wanted to separate private pain from official conflict before both became impossible to contain. Windsor Castle, one of the monarch's residences, carried added weight because family meetings there often shaped the crown itself. Harry expected his father alone. Then William entered after dinner began, carrying a red folder filled with disputed statements, leaked details, security arguments, and records of private conversations. The prince sat opposite his brother without greeting him. In that instant, a family discussion became an institutional reckoning. Harry placed a black folder between them. He demanded restored royal protection, permanent access to palace residences, and formal use of his full titles at international events. He warned that refusal would lead to selected letters from Charles and private messages involving William being released as proof of how the palace had treated him. Charles did not shout. He removed his glasses, set them beside his plate, and asked whether his son understood the threat he was making. Harry answered that he understood what silence had cost him. When he refused to withdraw the ultimatum, the king pushed back his chair and walked toward the fireplace, saying nothing. William rose next. He accused Harry of using family correspondence as leverage against the crown. The younger brother fired back that the palace had used status, security, and silence in the same way against him. Both men stood rigidly apart. Neither moved closer, yet the distance between them felt more dangerous than contact. Harry left without taking the black folder. William opened it and found prepared extracts, release schedules, and notes predicting how the material could dominate global headlines. The contents looked ready for publication, not discussion. After midnight, Charles called the Lord Chancellor, the senior legal officer who advises the government and crown, and ordered a complete revocation instrument. William suggested one final warning. The monarch refused. Before leaving, Harry turned back and told his brother, "You always wanted the path cleared." Now, inside the palace audience room, William would have to answer that accusation. When Harry entered the king's audience room, William was already standing beside the fireplace, and Charles was seated between them. There were no aides, advisors, cameras, or carefully prepared statements. The door closed with a quiet click. For the first time since the revocation order had been signed, the 3 men responsible for the royal family's deepest fracture were alone. And within minutes, years of controlled resentment broke through every layer of palace discipline. Harry placed the instrument on the table and asked whether every line was final. A revocation instrument was the document that turned the monarch's decision into action. Charles answered that the order had taken effect when the seal was applied. The king kept his voice steady, yet he looked at the paper instead of his son. William stepped forward before silence settled. He admitted recommending removal after the Windsor ultimatum. The prince argued that Harry could not demand the crown's protection while threatening to expose royal communications. He called the decision a boundary, not revenge, and said it should have been drawn years earlier. Harry turned on his father. He insisted he had gone to Windsor because requests had been ignored, not because he wanted to destroy the monarchy. Then he accused Charles of summoning him to the reception so courtiers could witness his humiliation. The monarch's expression hardened when his son called the evening a staged punishment. William answered with the anger he had rehearsed away. He said Harry had turned family pain into public currency. The younger brother fired back that William defended the institution because one day it would belong to him. Harry struck the table with his palm. A glass fell, spilling water across the carpet, and neither brother moved to lift it. Charles rose when William stepped closer. He placed himself between his sons and ordered them to sit. The prince obeyed slowly, locking his hands together to contain his fury. Harry remained standing, refusing the command. Then Charles delivered the deeper blow through a documented palace security briefing. Investigators had found that extracts from private correspondence were shared with an outside production team before the Windsor dinner. Harry denied authorizing transfer. His shock sounded real, and for the first time, uncertainty entered the room. Charles refused to name the recipient because the evidence sat inside a sealed security report. Harry demanded access. William answered that one traced message came from inside his brother's professional circle. Harry refused to leave without challenging it. Charles granted 1 hour with the officials who prepared the file, but warned that clearing his name would not restore the titles. The anger had spoken. Now the report would decide what remained. Harry had spent years believing that Charles or William alone could decide his royal fate. Inside the palace legal chamber, he discovered something colder. The revocation had passed through advisors, constitutional officials, security officers, and senior members of the royal household before the king ever lifted his pen. His family may have initiated the decision, but an entire machine had prepared to remove him, and every person in that room believed the monarchy had become safer without his titles. Harry entered the chamber carrying anger from the confrontation, yet the people waiting for him showed none. The Royal Titles Committee had reviewed his status for 12 days. That committee was a private advisory group assembled to examine how royal names, privileges, and official standing should be handled. Its members had studied commercial agreements, security demands, public appearances, and the use of royal identity abroad. The committee rejected a partial restriction because uncertainty had become the danger. Foreign organizations could still present Harry as an official representative, while businesses could benefit from a title no longer tied to public duty. One final measure, they decided, would end every disputed interpretation. Princess Anne had attended the last review. She supported revocation, but a documented account from the committee secretary recorded her warning that nobody should celebrate. Harry had worn uniform with pride, she said, and removing those distinctions was a family tragedy, not a palace victory. Anne repeated that message afterward, when she found William alone in the corridor. William listened as his aunt told him not to confuse necessity with innocence. The monarchy may have protected itself, she said, but the family had failed long before the Windsor folder appeared. The prince offered no defense. He simply lowered his eyes, because her words struck where Harry's accusations had not. Charles signed shortly after sunrise. The king reached the line removing his son from ceremonial precedence, the official order deciding where royal figures stand and appear, and paused until ink gathered at the pen's tip. Then he finished, closed the folder, and asked everyone to leave. Harry now studied electronic records showing extracts from Charles's correspondence uploaded to a private media workspace. The credentials belonged to a senior consultant within his overseas team. The files vanished hours later, but the transfer remained logged. Nothing proved Harry ordered it. Still, the committee judged that private royal material inside his operation created an unacceptable risk. Beyond the chamber, consequences were already unfolding. Staff removed his place from the royal table, withdrew his ceremonial escort, and ordered security to send him through the visitor's entrance. The document had become reality, and the palace was stripping him away piece by piece without further delay. Royal exile did not arrive with trumpets or a public proclamation. It came through small, merciless corrections. A chair disappeared from the family table. An equerry stepped away. A door Harry had used since childhood was suddenly declared restricted. By the time he returned to the reception corridor, the palace had already reorganized itself around his absence. He was still inside the building where he had grown up, yet every movement now reminded him that he no longer belonged there. Harry stepped from the legal chamber and learned he could remain only as a private guest. He would not join the royal procession, stand beside the family during formal greetings, or be announced by any former title. A royal procession was the ordered entrance of family members at an official event, and his removal from it told every guest that his place had ended. Anne now stood where he had expected to stand beside Charles. Palace staff moved faster than grief. They collected printed programs, revised the guest list, and removed Harry's royal cipher from the internal briefing. That cipher was the personal symbol used on papers and belongings. Before he crossed the corridor, the palace had erased another sign that he had ever belonged to its working life. A former equerry approached him next. The military officer had once served beside Harry, and instinctively began a salute before stopping halfway. An equerry is an officer who assists a senior royal with duties and ceremonial arrangements. The man lowered his hand and offered a handshake instead. Harry accepted, but the broken gesture wounded him more than the order. Harry entered an empty corridor and called Meghan. He told her the palace had removed everything, even the name used to announce him before the world. His voice stayed steady until he admitted that people who once worked for him had watched it happen. Meghan told him to leave and challenge the decision publicly. Then she repeated the demand when he fell silent. Harry turned toward the private staircase leading to the family apartments, determined to confront Charles again. A security officer blocked the route and apologized. His access had ended the moment the instrument took effect. Charles watched from the upper gallery as his son was redirected. The king gripped the railing but did not call out. Camilla stood behind him and asked whether this was truly the ending he wanted. The monarch gave her no answer. Anne reached Harry before the visitor's entrance. She guided him into an antechamber, dismissed the aide, and closed the door. The family member he expected to judge him most severely was about to offer the knight's only honest choice. Princess Anne did not offer Harry comfort, excuses, or a secret path back to royal status. She offered something more difficult: the truth. Alone in the antechamber, without officials or documents between them, she told him that the crown had made its decision, but he still controlled what the decision would turn him into. He could leave as a man consumed by humiliation, or he could walk away without giving the palace another reason to define him entirely by conflict. Anne removed her ceremonial gloves and placed them on the table. She told Harry this was not an official meeting, and nothing she said carried authority. Ceremonial gloves are formal clothing worn during royal duties, but setting them aside stripped away rank and procedure. For the first time that evening, she spoke to him as a nephew rather than a constitutional problem. Anne admitted that she had supported revocation. The Windsor ultimatum had made continued uncertainty impossible, and the monarchy could not survive endless arguments over duty, access, and status. Yet she also said the family had hidden behind procedure for years. Instead of speaking honestly, they had sent lawyers, aides, and statements, until Harry learned to answer pressure with greater pressure. Harry finally named what frightened him. He was not terrified of losing ceremonies or palace rooms. He feared becoming irrelevant to the family after spending his life as the second son. The titles had become his last proof that the palace could not erase him completely. Anne challenged him without cruelty. She said a title could not force love, trust, or understanding. The crown had removed his rank, but Harry had already weakened its meaning by demanding royal authority without accepting royal restraint. Her words hurt, because they carried neither hatred nor triumph. Harry pulled a prepared statement from his pocket. It accused Charles and William of betrayal and promised an international response. He read the opening paragraph aloud, then stopped. Anne remained silent. Harry tore the page once, then again, and laid the pieces beside her gloves. Anne then delivered a private message from Charles, given to her in a recorded conversation before the reception. The king wanted Harry to know that revocation did not end their bond as father and son. He had stayed silent because he feared tenderness would sound like an excuse. Harry chose restraint. He immediately ordered his team not to release the Windsor correspondence and agreed to leave without a public scene. When he opened the door, William was waiting alone. The palace had emptied around them, and one final exchange would decide whether Harry left as an enemy or only as a brother with no place beside him. By morning, the world knew that Harry's royal titles were gone. Yet the image that dominated the front pages was not the signed instrument, the palace statement, or the revised line of succession. It was a single photograph taken near the visitor's entrance. Harry walking away alone, while William stood beneath the palace arch behind him. The distance between the brothers became the image through which millions understood the collapse of an entire royal relationship. Buckingham Palace released its statement at 8 o'clock. It confirmed that Harry's titles, styles, distinctions, and ceremonial privileges had been revoked permanently. A royal style is the formal wording used when naming a member of the family, and its removal made clear that no official status remained. The announcement called the decision complete, while Charles expressed hope that private family ties might survive outside royal duty. Broadcasters interrupted regular programs within minutes. Commentators called the order the harshest internal sanction of the modern reign. Some described it as overdue clarity. Others saw a father using the full force of the crown against his younger son. Every debate returned to the same painful contrast. The monarchy had ended confusion, but the king had deepened a family wound. One national newspaper captured the public mood with the headline, "The Prince Who Left Without a Title." Its front page showed Harry clutching the folded order while William remained behind him beneath the palace arch. The image made their final distance feel permanent. Crowds gathered outside Buckingham Palace by midday. Some applauded Charles and held signs supporting William. Others placed flowers against the railings with handwritten pleas asking the monarch not to lose his son completely. The country was not united by the decision. It was divided by what the decision had cost. Harry watched the coverage from a private London residence before leaving Britain. Meghan sat beside him as the same photograph appeared across every channel. He switched off the television and admitted that the image made him look more alone than he had felt. She answered that silence would now speak louder than anger. A documented palace account later confirmed the brothers' final corridor exchange. William had not apologized, and Harry had not withdrawn his accusations. The prince simply said, "Whatever happens after tonight, do not release the letters." His brother answered, "I won't." Charles called soon afterward without advisors. The conversation lasted under 4 minutes. Neither man mentioned the titles. The king asked whether Harry was safe, and his son said yes. That brief answer preserved a bond the palace statement could neither protect nor erase. The world had judged the fall. Now Harry's restraint would decide what remained after it. Harry left the palace without the titles that had followed him from birth. But the final meaning of the night was larger than any royal name. Charles preserved the authority of the crown. William secured the boundaries of the future monarchy. Yet neither man emerged victorious. The institution became clearer, stronger, and more disciplined, while the family at its center became smaller. The revocation ended years of uncertainty, but it also confirmed that some wounds cannot be repaired by rank, duty, or decree. Harry signed an acknowledgement before leaving Britain. The document confirmed that he had received the revocation order, though it did not require him to approve it. He accepted that the titles would not return, and instructed his legal team to remove all private correspondence with Charles from commercial archives. His choice mattered because the letters had once been his strongest weapon. Now he protected them. Charles received confirmation of his son's departure inside Buckingham Palace. The king placed the signed instrument inside a red dispatch box, the locked case used to carry sensitive royal papers, and turned the key. Then he cleared the duplicate from his desk, leaving only a childhood photograph of William and Harry beside him. Charles had acted as monarch when Harry needed a father. He also knew the crown could no longer tolerate threats, uncertain authority, or royal status without royal duty. His success carried no triumph. He had protected the throne while losing the belief that duty alone could hold his family together. William returned to the audience room after everyone had gone. The prince noticed the water stain left by the fallen glass and pushed Harry's chair back beneath the table. He had supported the removal, but he had never wanted his brother destroyed. The gesture admitted what his words could not. Harry now faced a harsher freedom. Palace recognition could no longer define him, and inherited status could no longer prove his worth. By refusing to release the letters, he made his first major choice without using conflict to show that he still mattered. The crown established its final rule. Royal authority could not survive without responsibility. No reconciliation occurred, and no title returned. Yet Charles's private call and Harry's silence preserved one narrow bond. They were no longer monarch and prince in official life. They were a father and son who would have to meet without ceremony. The palace doors closed with finality. The prince was gone, the titles were gone, and the man who remained would stand on his own. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.